Her hands were the first thing I noticed, steady, elegant, faint lines tracing the years she never tried to hide. When she adjusted the stethoscope against my chest, her fingers brushed my skin for barely a second, and yet my heartbeat, the one she was listening for, betrayed me instantly. She looked up. Our eyes met. "Still fast," she murmured, with a half-smile that didn't reach her eyes. I wanted to tell her it wasn't the caffeine, or the long shift I'd just finished. It was her. Dr. Alina Ward was in her mid-40s, but nothing about her felt older. She carried herself with the kind of calm that made every sound in the room seem quieter. Her voice was low, unhurried, like she measured every word before giving it away. I'd come to her clinic 3 times that month, the first time for an actual reason, the other 2. I wasn't sure anymore. She leaned back in her chair, eyes scanning the screen behind me. "You don't take care of yourself, do you?" It wasn't a question. It was something between concern and disappointment. "I try," I said, which wasn't true. She nodded once, lips pressing together. Then softer. "You remind me of someone." That pause hung in the air. She didn't say who. I didn't ask. But something shifted. The room smelled faintly of antiseptic and jasmine, her perfume, barely there, but impossible to ignore. Outside, rain pressed against the window. She turned slightly, the light catching in her hair, and I wondered if she realized how much she changed the space just by standing in it. When she reached for the blood pressure cuff again, her sleeve brushed my hand. That tiny contact felt like the whole world narrowed to that one point of touch. My pulse jumped. She must have felt it. Her lips curved, just barely. "See?" she said quietly. "You really don't help your case." I laughed, awkwardly. "Guess you're too good at your job." Her gaze lingered on me longer than it should have. Then she looked away, pretending to type notes. "That's not always a compliment," she said under her breath. I watched her for a moment, the way her fingers hovered above the keyboard but didn't move. There was something about the silence, not empty, but waiting. She exhaled softly, as if remembering she wasn't supposed to say what she was thinking. "Your results are fine," she said finally, professional again. "Just slow down a little. Whatever's chasing you, it can wait." Her words landed heavier than she meant them to. Because she didn't know, or maybe she did, that the only thing chasing me was the thought of her. When I stood to leave, she walked me to the door. No reason to. Doctors didn't do that. But she did. Our shoulders almost brushed, and I swear I could feel the warmth of her through the air between us. She reached for the doorknob at the same time I did. Our hands touched. Neither of us moved. Her breath caught, quiet, sharp, gone in a second, and when she looked at me, the calm in her eyes faltered for the first time. Then the door swung open behind her. A nurse stepped in with a file, stopping mid-sentence. Dr. Ward pulled her hand back. Her voice, when she spoke again, was steady, too steady. "Next appointment," she said. "Same time next week?" I nodded, though we both knew this wasn't just about checkups anymore. And as I stepped into the hallway, I could still feel the echo of her touch, like something that had already begun, long before either of us admitted it. The next appointment wasn't supposed to feel different, but it did. The clinic lights were dimmer that afternoon, the rain outside softer, like the world had decided to move slower just for us. I told myself a dozen times that week that it was nothing. Just routine. But as soon as Dr. Ward stepped into the room, tying her white coat at the waist, I knew I'd been lying. "Back again," she said lightly, flipping through my file. "You're making a habit of this." I smiled. "Guess I like good care." Her brow lifted, half amusement, half warning. But she didn't look away. Not right away. She asked the usual questions: sleep, diet, stress, her tone professional, her posture composed. But between words, her gaze kept finding mine. Not long enough to be obvious. Just long enough to make my chest tighten. I noticed things I hadn't before: the faint line of tiredness around her mouth, the way her hand trembled slightly when she adjusted her glasses, the necklace she kept touching when she grew quiet. Long day? I asked. She hesitated, then sighed. Every day's long lately. She smiled, but it didn't hold. Divorce paperwork's never as clean as they tell you it'll be. The words slipped out before she could stop them. She froze, eyes darting away, as if she'd just broken her own rule. I'm sorry, she added softly. That's not something I should. It's okay, I said. You don't have to apologize. Her shoulders relaxed a fraction. For the first time, I saw her as more than the woman behind the stethoscope. She was human, tired, alone, still learning how to start again. When she leaned in to check my breathing, her perfume, that same faint jasmine, filled the air between us. She was close enough that her hair brushed my cheek. Deep breath, she said, her voice low. I obeyed, but my focus was nowhere near my lungs. Her hand rested lightly on my shoulder, and even through the fabric, it burned, gentle, grounding, dangerous. She must have felt it too. Her hand lingered a moment too long before pulling away. A silence followed, the kind that wasn't empty, but full. I shouldn't talk about my personal life, she said suddenly, half to herself. It blurs lines. Maybe lines need to be blurred sometimes, I said before I could stop myself. Her eyes snapped up. For a heartbeat, either of us breathed. Then she smiled, small, tired, real. You're too young to say things like that. Maybe, I said. But I mean them. She shook her head, trying to dismiss it, but her hand brushed my arm as she reached for a folder. Not accidental, not entirely. The touch stayed. So did the look that followed, soft, uncertain, but no longer pretending. When the appointment ended, she didn't stand right away. I waited by the door. She stood by the window, watching the rain slide down the glass. You ever wonder, she said quietly, still facing away, why some people meet too late? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She turned then, and for the first time, her expression wasn't guarded. It was open. Bare. That moment hung between us, the sound of rain, the scent of jasmine, and two people who should have stepped apart but didn't. And then her phone rang, breaking the silence, reminding us both what shouldn't be said, not yet. Still, when she handed me my file, our fingers brushed once more. Long enough to make sure either of us could pretend it was just coincidence anymore. The clinic had emptied early that evening. The hall outside was quiet, washed in the pale gold of a setting sun. I'd stayed late under the excuse of waiting for a prescription, though both of us knew it wasn't the real reason. Dr. Ward stood at her desk, coat unbuttoned, hair slightly undone from the day. She looked tired but not distant, the kind of tired that made her softer somehow. Human. You really didn't have to wait, she said, though her tone wasn't convincing. I didn't mind. She smiled faintly, eyes flicking toward the door as if checking no one was around. You never do you? I guess not when it's you. She stilled. The air between us shifted, not sharply, just enough that every breath felt measured. Her phone buzzed on the desk. She ignored it. Your results are normal, she said after a beat, flipping through the papers as a distraction. You're fine. Good, I said, though I wasn't sure what fine even meant anymore. Another buzz. This time, she glanced down. A name lit up the screen, Michael, ex-husband. Her expression tightened. You can take it, I said softly. She shook her head. No. It's never urgent. Just unfinished things that should have stayed finished. Her voice wavered on the last word, and I saw something in her eyes, that quiet exhaustion of someone who's been holding themselves together too long. I stepped closer before I thought about it. You don't always have to hold it in. She looked up at me, really looked. And who says I do? You don't have to say it, I said. I can see it. For a moment, she didn't move. Then she exhaled, slow, shaky. You shouldn't talk to me like that, she said quietly. It makes it harder. Harder to what? Her eyes flicked to the doorway, then back to me. To remember the lines. I took one step closer, close enough to smell her perfume again, faint jasmine mixed with rain-damp air. Maybe the lines are already gone, I said. She opened her mouth to respond, and that was when the door clicked open. A nurse poked her head in. Dr. Ward? The shipment forms. Oh, sorry, I didn't realize you had someone in here. Alina straightened instantly, a flush rising to her cheeks. It's fine, I'll handle it. The nurse nodded and left, leaving the faint echo of footsteps and an even louder silence behind. When the door closed again, Alina pressed a hand to her chest, half laughing, half trembling. God, that could have looked terrible. It already does, I said, smiling despite the tension. She turned to me sharply, but there was no anger in her eyes. Only something fragile. You don't understand. People talk. They always do. Let them, I said. Her breath caught. The room seemed to shrink around us. She reached past me for a folder, her arm brushing mine. I didn't move. Neither did she. For one breathless second, we stood there, so close I could see the faint freckle near her collarbone, the rise and fall of her chest as she tried not to move closer. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. You should go. I know. But I didn't. Our eyes met, a single heartbeat of suspended gravity. The space between us hummed, alive and dangerous. Then she turned away first, breaking the moment. Next week, she said, her voice steady again. We'll talk. But as I walked out, I could feel her gaze following me, heavy, unspoken, and anything but professional. And even though nothing had happened, it felt like everything just had. The next morning, I told myself I wouldn't go back. I told myself to let the silence do what it was supposed to, cool everything down. But silence doesn't erase heat, it only concentrates it. By noon, I was standing in the clinic lobby again. Her office door was half open. I could hear voices, hers and someone else's. A man. You can't keep doing this, Alina, he was saying. People talk. They see things. It was her ex-husband's voice. I recognized it from the call Idaho that had lit up her phone days ago. Michael, stop, she said, tone low, brittle. You have no right to. I saw him leave your office last night. After hours. You think nobody noticed? There was a pause. My chest tightened. You're imagining things, she said. But her voice lacked conviction. Am I? He said sharply. You forget, I know how you get when you're lonely. A sharp intake of breath. Then her voice, quiet but cutting. Get out. Footsteps. The door opened wider. Michael brushed past me on his way out, eyes cold, jaw tight. He didn't say a word, but the look he gave me said enough. When I stepped into her office, Alina was standing perfectly still, one hand pressed to her temple, her expression unreadable. You hurt, she said flatly. I didn't mean to. Yes, you did. Her tone was distant, controlled, the kind of calm that hides a storm. He's wrong, I said quietly. About what he thinks. She looked up sharply. Is he? The air thickened. You think I don't know what this looks like, she said. A woman my age divorced your doctor. People already make assumptions. I don't care what they think. Well, I do, she snapped, then immediately looked away, guilty. Sorry. I can't afford another mistake. Is that what I am? She hesitated. She stopped. Say it, I said, stepping closer. Her eyes flicked up to mine, soft, furious, afraid. You're the first person who's made me feel anything in years. The words hit harder than I expected. She didn't move, but her shoulders trembled. Then why are you pushing me away? I whispered. Because you don't know what happens when I stop. She turned, but I caught her wrist, gently, not enough to hold, just enough to keep her there. Her pulse raced under my fingers. I'm not afraid, I said. She laughed, quiet and bitter. That's because you're too young to lose anything yet. I'm losing you, I said. Her breath hitched. The distance between us vanished in a single heartbeat. She turned toward me, almost against her will, our faces inches apart. Her voice came out barely audible. If you stay, there's no going back. I wasn't planning to. For a moment, neither of us breathed. Then her phone buzzed again, a single text lighting up the screen. A colleague's name. Board meeting rescheduled. They want to discuss your conduct. Her eyes met mine, wide, frightened, raw. This is what I was afraid of, she whispered. But even as she said it, she didn't step back. Her hand, trembling, brushed against mine, and stayed there. We're already too far in, she said. And with that, she made the first real decision between us, not to end it, but to stop pretending it wasn't already happening. It was late when she called. Her voice was calm, too calm, the kind that comes after a day of pretending. I need to see you, she said. Just not here. We met at her apartment, neutral ground that wasn't neutral at all. A place filled with half-packed boxes and the faint smell of rain through the open balcony door. She stood barefoot by the window, hair loose, eyes red from exhaustion or maybe tears. I shouldn't have asked you to come, she said as soon as I stepped inside. But you did. She nodded once, looking down. I know. The quiet stretched, fragile. Then she added, They're investigating. The board. Someone reported us. The words sank like stones. I'm sorry, I said. It's not your fault. She gave a small, weary laugh. Or maybe it is. I can't even tell anymore. She walked toward the counter, picking up a glass of water just to have something to hold. The tremor in her hand betrayed the calm she tried to project. I could lose my license, she said quietly. My career. Everything I built. I took a step closer. And what if you lose me instead? That made her look up. Her eyes softened, tired, torn, alive. That's not fair, she whispered. Neither is pretending. None of this means anything. She set the glass down, the sound sharp in the silence. I've spent my life doing what's right, she said, almost to herself. What people expected. I kept the rules, I kept my distance, and I ended up alone anyway. Her voice broke slightly. And then you showed up, and suddenly every rule felt like punishment. She took a breath, stepped closer, close enough that her shoulder brushed mine as she passed, like a test of will. Tell me what you want, she said, her voice shaking now. Say it out loud. I didn't hesitate. You. The word hung between us, electric. For a moment, we just stood there, the air between us thick and unsteady. Her eyes searched mine, for logic, for permission, for a reason not to move closer. She didn't find one. When she finally spoke, it was barely a whisper. You don't understand what this will cost. I don't care, I said. Yes, you do. Her hand lifted, hovering near my face, not touching. You care too much. That's what scares me. Then, finally, her fingers brushed my jaw. Light as breath. Everything slowed, the hum of rain, the warmth of her skin, the sound of our hearts beating too close together. I tried so hard not to feel this, she murmured. But I'm tired of being careful. I leaned in, not to claim, not to push, just to meet her halfway. And for a second, we didn't fight it. We didn't move, didn't speak, just stayed suspended in that fragile space between what we wanted and what we knew we shouldn't take. Then she pulled back. Slowly. Her eyes glistened, but her voice was steady again. You should go, she said. Before I change my mind. I nodded, though neither of us believed I really would. At the door, I turned once more. She was still standing there, one hand pressed to her chest, like she was trying to steady something that had already broken loose. And in that moment, without a word, we both understood, whatever this was, it had already changed us. There was no going back. A week passed. No calls, no visits, no late appointments under false excuses. Just silence, the kind that doesn't fade, but lingers, thick and unfinished. Then, one morning, a text appeared on my phone. Come by. After hours. No explanation. No signature. She didn't need one. When I arrived, the clinic was empty again, the lights dim, the air smelling faintly of disinfectant and rain. Her office door was open. She stood by the window, arms folded, staring out at the street below. "You came," she said softly, not turning. "You asked?" She nodded. For a moment, neither of us said anything. The quiet wasn't cold this time, just full of things we didn't need to explain anymore. "They cleared me," she said finally. "No charges. Just a warning." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. "Good." Her lips curved faintly. "It should feel good. But it doesn't, not really. It just feels empty." I took a step closer. "Then let me fix that." She laughed under her breath, shaking her head. "You always think you can fix things." "Not everything," I said quietly. "Just this." She turned then, meeting my eyes for the first time in days. There was no defense left, no professional mask, just her. "You don't make this easy," she said. "I wasn't supposed to. Age, careers, rumors," she listed softly, eyes lowering. "You know how impossible this looks from the outside?" "Maybe," I said, stepping closer. "But it doesn't feel impossible when I'm here." Her hand lifted instinctively when I reached for her, not to stop me, just to brace herself. My fingers found hers, slow, unsure at first, then certain. Her hand tightened around mine. "It's still wrong," she whispered. "I know," I said. "But it's real." She let out a long, trembling breath. Then, almost imperceptibly, she leaned forward, resting her forehead against mine. The contact was small, but it felt infinite. No words. No decisions. Just two people who'd finally stopped fighting the current pulling them together. Her thumb brushed my wrist, tracing small circles, grounding, gentle, unbearably intimate. "I don't know what happens next," she murmured. "Then we figure it out," I said. She smiled, tired, warm, and quietly alive. The clock on the wall ticked softly. Outside, the rain had stopped. A faint light from the street lamps filtered through the blinds, striping her face in gold and shadow. She looked up at me once more, eyes soft. "You're staying this time?" "I was never leaving." Her head tilted just enough for our foreheads to touch again. Then she closed her eyes, and I wrapped my arms around her, not a desperate embrace, but one of quiet relief, of something found and finally safe. We stayed like that, no rush, no words, until the world outside faded to silence. And for the first time, it didn't feel like crossing a line. It just felt right.